Hey everyone, we are live. Patty G, we usually do start on time, I think. Today we did not because of our little one. That's exactly right. Thanks everyone for understanding. And although some of you might think that I was stuck in traffic, that is not the case today. I didn't pretend that one like I did last week with our babysitter. But first off, everyone, thank you for subscribing to our channel. Thank you for liking this video. We have a lot to cover tonight. I'm going to go over what we're going to cover, and then we'll start bit by bit. Dr. John, thanks for being here tonight. He has a very good role tonight, but I'm going to start by sharing all the facts. We're going to discuss Chad Daybell. His trial has officially been delayed. And then we're going to discuss the Delphi arrest. A man has been arrested, and we are going to discuss that justice for Abby and for Libby. It's about time. That happened back in 2017, and it was Valentine's Day. They found their bodies, and I am just so grateful that there's been an arrest. And I'm going to teach John a little bit about that. I think that we've already, while we're still waiting for the news release, or excuse me, the press conference that the police are going to hold in Delphi, we have a lot of information about the man under arrest, Richard Allen. So you just wait on that. And then we're going to talk about a tragic case of a little boy who was found in a suitcase in April. Many remember him. A 5-year-old boy was discovered by a mushroom hunter in rural Indiana. So 2 cases from Indiana today. And he was unnamed. He was given a grave, and a beautiful grave, but nobody knew his name until recently this week. And his name is Cairo Jordan. He was 5 years old, and now his mother is wanted on a murder warrant. So we're going to be discussing that. And John, I have a lot of questions for you when it comes to that. So with that being said, thank you everyone for being here. First off, Chad Daybell, his trial has officially been delayed. I'm going to share a little bit more about that. So let me pull this up too. So in other words, in order, thank you, Dal. Thank you so much. I'm going to pull this up so I can, Dal, we appreciate you so much. I'm going to pull this up so I get this exactly right. And we have been in touch with Kay and Larry today, and I'll read you a statement that they gave us to read tonight. First off, East Idaho News saw the order. Nate Eaton was doing some great reporting on it. I recommend heading to his video that's posted on our Facebook page, Hidden True Crime. So essentially, the judge Boyce responded finally to John Pryor's motion, a request to delay a continuance in Chad Daybell's trial. And it's interesting. You know, John Pryor did request October, but at this point there is no date set. The trial was supposed to start in January, and now it is definitely delayed. The trials, the Chad and Lori's cases, Lori Vallow, are still combined right now, and we'll see what happens. And of course, Lori's competence is once again in question. So it is an interesting time in this trial. We don't know now when the trial will be, but it has been, the continuance has been granted by Judge Boyce. And this is what he stated. I'll read this really quick. Despite the preparations, the court has already taken a considerable time and expense, including multiple on-site visits and coordination efforts with Ada County, wherein counsel for the parties have also at times been present to hold this trial in January. This trial must be vacated and continued. And so I know that we all want justice for this case. Many of us that have been following this it's now been 3 years, by the way. Tammy Daybell was murdered this month 3 years ago. And it's 3 years ago. And it's been, so we're going into the 4th year. I reached out to Kay and Larry, and they wanted me to share a statement. And I am going to do that really quickly. 1 second. See if I can do this. Okay. Did that work? There we are. I'll make it big. From Larry and Kay Woodcock to Hidden True Crime, we understand the delay, although it doesn't make us happy or make the circumstances any easier. However, justice must be achieved by the letter of the law, and for that, we can continue to wait however long it takes. We will be here as long as our Lord allows. We want justice for JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. In due time, we know justice will prevail. Next on our list is justice for Charles in Arizona. He would have wanted it in that order. Kay and Larry Woodcock. And so that is a beautiful, actually, thing. Kay's told me that before, actually, that Charles would say to her, go take care of the kids first. Make sure we get justice for JJ and Tylee first, then worry about me. And so she's saying that again. So anyway, John, I know you didn't know about that continuance. So you're sitting there. Any thoughts? I mean, you knew about talking to Kay and Larry, but you just learned about it.
I don't think it's unusual. I think this is a case with fairly limited resources and high stakes. So usually in cases where resources are somewhat limited and the stakes are high, meaning the death penalty is on the table, things tend to get put off quite a bit.
Yes. I want to briefly talk about the Delphi arrest because that is a case. I know, John, you haven't been following this case as closely as I have. It's heartbreaking for Abby and Libby, two friends that went for a walk on a community trail in it was the February 13th, 2017. So it was, and then they never found them. They went to pick them up, couldn't find them. And their bodies were found on Valentine's Day. It was heartbreaking. And they had been murdered by somebody. And one of the most fascinating bits of evidence in this case, and I'm telling this to John, by the way, I feel like a lot of people know this, and I'm sharing with you, John. The most interesting thing of evidence in this case is Liberty, actually, German, actually put her recorder on and got video of the man saying, go down the hill. And so there was a photo as well as his voice. And there were multiple sketches done. There have been multiple suspects. One was really compelling recently. It was someone that has now been convicted of child porn, and he admitted to actually talking to one of them. I can't remember if it was Abby or Libby, under an alias or a fake name on social media. I mean, that had my attention. Thank you so much, Kim. But this man was completely out of the blue. Richard Allen, he's a local man. Let me tell you a little bit about him because, interestingly enough, Delphi isn't telling us a lot, but they are saying that they're going to have a press conference Monday morning at 10 a.m. where they're going to tell us a lot more. But this Richard Allen is 50 years old. He has a family. He's been married since 1991. He was a physician technician at CVS. He has at least one daughter, at least. And it was completely out of the blue. For people that have been following this case and the sleuths out there and the detectives, this was not on anyone's on our radar. So that has been shocking. And I think we're all waiting to find out more. But I want to show you guys a few fascinating photos that have been discovered today. So on his wife's Facebook profile, first off, no public posts were shared on her Facebook profile in 2017. The girls were murdered in 2017, the friends. So that's interesting. But let me try to share my screen again. Let's see. First off, let's start with this. These are the sketches. There were a couple of different sketches. Let me remove this comment. Thank you once again, Kim. So as you can see, there were two sketches. There was the gentleman above, and I actually think he looks a lot like him. Do you see that, John? The above sketch. The below sketch.
The upper left.
Yeah, the upper left, exactly. The lower sketch on the bottom left seemed like somebody a little bit younger. You know, that's when people, I think, were wondering, especially me, about maybe a pedophile or someone using social media or that had maybe targeted the girls. But I think that threw a few people off because this is a 50-year-old man. Yeah. And someone's saying, oh, so Jill, thank you for correcting me. There were photos and posts from 2017, but the wife deleted them after his arrest. Several have shared screenshots caught before the wife deleted. Jill, thank you for sharing that bit of information. I'm multitasking here while talking a lot and reading. So thank you. And if you send some of those over to Hidden True Crime, we are definitely delving into Richard Allen and are going to be all ears and eyes Monday morning as we learn more about him. So let me now share this next thing. And I'm like excited to show you, Dr. Babe. I like want to show you this. I'm like, take a look at this. Okay. So first off, look at this picture. Okay. That is his wife. Again, she's 50 years old as well. They're the exact same age. They've been married since 1991. And of course, they have at least one daughter. And I'm going to show you something now in the background of this photo that was caught by some amazingly attentive web sleuths. So here we go. Okay, it's probably still hard to see, so I'm going to try to get it as big as I can. But in the background, let me see if I can zoom it here. Hold on. In the background. Okay, did that help? That's the sketch.
It's still pretty blurry. Oh.
Okay, well, look at that. Right. That is the sketch.
Right. Just to the right of the bulletin board.
Just to the right of the bulletin board. That was the younger man. The sketch I pointed out that I felt didn't look like him as much. They have that sketch hanging up in their house. I mean, what the heck? And I actually, John, I'm going to pull up another photo that I find quite chilling, but I'd love your opinion.
Does that imply that the wife knew too? That kind of implies that the wife...
That's a good question. I don't know if it implies the wife knew or not, but you know what? You're the psychologist. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on this. You know, someone was just arrested. We don't know much about him, Richard Allen, but he has his sketch, the police sketch of the murderer of these girls that he killed hanging in his house. What's that about?
I think it's a trophy of sorts. I think he's basking in it a little bit. He may be gloating that the sketch doesn't look like him, at least that one doesn't, and that he's gotten away with it. So, but you know, it's an interesting question about what his wife knows. It doesn't necessarily mean that she knows. He could say that he put it up because he's looking for the person. I mean, he could give a lot of explanations, right? But still, you and I don't have a lot of suspect sketches just hanging up on our walls or a refrigerator. It is unusual, but it's definitely a reminder. It's a constant reminder of what he did.
Yeah, as Colette said, that's strange even if he weren't a suspect, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's unless you argue that somehow he's invested in the search or something like that. I don't know. It's a little bizarre.
Yeah, it is. I have one more thing I want to show you. Speaking of trophies, I would love your opinion on this one. John
Yep.
as well. Hold on. Okay. Stop screen. Sorry, guys. I'm share screen. I'm going to have to pull a Julie Holden and figure out how she does her nice little slide so I don't have to keep going back and forth. Julie, teach me sometime soon. We'll do a lesson. All right. That is his daughter. She is of age. I checked before I shared her photo.
Okay.
I think she was married in 2018. So that is Richard Allen's daughter.
Mhm.
That is the very bridge where his photo was taken and where he took the girls from. That is the last place Libby and Abby ever were, and where they took the photo of him. And that is the bridge.
Well, that might suggest that somehow he lives close to that bridge. Is he near the bridge?
He is local, and I'm not sure, I haven't done the map questing. I'm sure many internet detectives have done that sort of investigating how close he is to the bridge today. We just learned about Richard Allen today.
Okay.
It's a great question, but 2 miles away, Marie said. I knew we'd have someone know. Thank you, Marie.
Yeah.
2 miles away.
So some of the early research on serial killers, and so I guess he has 2 victims. You have to wonder if he has more victims, by the way. But a lot of the early research, a lot of the early profiling was looking at geographical locations of victims, and a lot of early work demonstrated that many serial killers had some fairly close proximity to the murders. So 2 miles is not far, obviously.
Yeah.
1 mile.
And someone is asking a great question. Who took the photo? I do not know. If someone knows, I've been fascinated at how much people know in our chat. If anyone knows, please let us know. And they're saying that he lived close to the victim Abby as well. It is disturbing AF. I am with you, Kathy. AF. All right. So again, that's what we know right now, because law enforcement is being very tight-lipped right now. In fact, to the point where some reporters are complaining because of laws in Indiana where within 24 hours they need to share exactly, because it's not stating his charges, what he was charged with, how they know, where's the probable cause, where's the affidavit. But reporters are having a hard time getting things out of law enforcement right now too. So we're going to know a lot more Monday. So anyway, it is chilling. It does make me wonder if there are possible additional victims. Anybody else see any other sketches in his house? Gosh. Yeah. Yeah. And then I want to spend some time talking about Cairo Jordan, the 5-year-old boy with a little name, the little boy with a name. 1 second. I'm going to put you on mute, everyone, for just a second. We had a babysitter fall through. It sounds so dreamy and wonderful to have your spouse be co-host and your business partner until all of a sudden you have childcare issues when you both want to host a podcast together. Not to mention today is a holiday where we live, something we're still getting used to because we're new here, and he didn't have school today. So anyway, it's a little awkward because he's in here and I'm about to tell a story. So that's what I'm dealing with. He walked in. But so join our family on our hidden true crime business talking in code. No, I actually don't think he knows what we're talking about. But this is also going to be good practice for not making YouTube unmonetize us, because they do that with certain words. So we're going to talk in code here with a little 5-year-old in the room. But Cairo, I was going to discuss Cairo's case today on News Nation. That fell through. They actually had law enforcement that were willing to go on and talk about it instead, which I fully support. That would be someone that I would absolutely recommend talking to the news. John and I have been talking a lot about Cairo's case because a little 5-year-old, and if many of you don't know what's going on, you might remember the boy that was found in a suitcase, a Las Vegas themed suitcase. So I said Las Vegas on it, in rural Indiana. And a man, he's been interviewed many times. He was heartbroken to discover. I can't imagine what that would be like, but he saw the suitcase and he opened it and found Cairo. And for many, many months, this little boy did not have a name. Nobody knew. They only learned recently because they did have fingerprints, 2 different set of fingerprints. And Cairo's mother, her name is Dejan Anderson. She was arrested for a couple different things. And so they were able to confirm her fingerprints, and the other fingerprints were her friend, a girlfriend, Dawn. Dawn, I want to say Coleman. Let me confirm her last name. Let me pull this up really quickly. I'm going to pull their, I'm going to pull to read the probable cause up. John, I sent you the probable cause. Did I not send it to me? Here it is. Okay. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this probable cause and what we know. And the one reason I want to discuss it is because it seems like, and John, I would love your thoughts on this, but we have yet again, a mother who seems to think that her child was possessed. So on the evening of Saturday, let's go back to the beginning. On the evening of Saturday, April 16th, 2022, Jeffrey Meredith, the local man, he was the mushroom hunter. He called 911 and reported finding a body of a young black male child in a suitcase in the woods off of Holder Road in southeast Washington County. Again, this is rural Indiana. Meredith explained he was mushroom hunting on his property and had crossed over to the property that runs along that north side road. So it was right on the edge of the road, but the road is a dead end road. When he saw the suitcase, which was not covered and could not be viewed from the roadway, he approached it, opened it, and inside he located a pillow on a closed black trash bag. He ripped open the trash bag and found what he describes as being Cairo. So now let's fast forward to what we know now. One second.
I just want to comment on the person who found him.
Jeffrey Meredith.
Right. That must have been really traumatic.
It was.
You know, that's like the stuff of nightmares, right? That's like Edgar Allan Poe type stuff. Horrible. Stephen King type stuff.
He was heartbroken. He's now been interviewed several times. He was interviewed when this young boy didn't have a name, when Cairo didn't have a name and nobody knew who he was. And he was interviewed this week again. And he was crying, and he said that he knew that God would not take him from this earth until he learned this child's name, that he just needed to know Cairo's name. And in the interview, he kept repeating it. Cairo Jordan, Cairo. So there is this Washington County, Indiana locals also it's really touching. They came together and created a gravestone for this little nameless boy. And it's a beautiful gravestone. It's not like a tiny little marker. They made a beautiful gravestone and they engraved in it. I'm not wording it exactly right, but like only God knows your name. But there is space for his name, and they're now going to engrave Cairo Jordan and his birthday into his name. And actually his birthday was this week, and he would have been 6 years old. In fact, he was identified, I believe, on his birthday or the day after his birthday, that he would have turned 6. Go ahead.
I noticed, I wanted to respond to Julie. Can you see Julie's comment about why did she put him in a suitcase?
Yes.
That's an interesting question. I honestly, I think Julie, it was really simple. I think it was the most expedient way to deal with the dead body. But I guess there's some speculation that the child may have been alive when he was put in the suitcase. So in that case, that's a very different scenario. So he could have been in that case, it would be a form of suffocation and a type of torture. So those are so I think, when this alleged perpetrator is located, I think it'd be very important to figure out whether that child was alive when put into the suitcase or not.
Well, and I'll tell you what the autopsy said, and this is the initial autopsy before we knew his name or the circumstances I'm about to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And the autopsy was an electrolyte imbalance and then they went further in the autopsy to suggest it might have been a dehydration because of an illness or sickness. And that made things a little bit more confusing too. You're like, go ahead.
So again, that doesn't really resolve it because it could be neglect.
Absolutely. And I will say this, she was arrested before this happened. She was arrested for child neglect already.
Right. So dehydration would suggest maybe neglect. So he could have been deceased when she put him in there, or she could have put him in there and he was still alive and he was, he passed away from dehydration. So that doesn't really solve that issue, but it's a massive difference.
Shows suffering, neglect and suffering. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't, I mean, either way, it's horrendous, right? But because you have a situation with a child who's been horribly abused and eventually killed, but to put a child in a suitcase and prevent any way to exit the suitcase and knowing the child's still alive, that's sadistic. That's a very different type of crime. I mean, there's still horrendous crimes. There's going to be, obviously, when they locate her, I don't think there's an easy way out of this for her, but right. So
I agree. Well, it gets even more chilling. Now that we know Cairo Jordan's name and know who this little boy was. I have a visitor that keeps coming in, and it's kind of an awkward conversation too. So I could ignore him, but we also don't want him to hear. So I'm sorry, everyone. She is out of jail, Megan. Yes, she is out of jail right now. She is at large. She is wanted. Her name is Dejan Anderson, and she is wanted on a murder warrant. And she is not around. They did arrest her friend. There were 2 sets of fingerprints on the garbage sack that they'd gotten, and they did identify both. They have arrested her friend, and she is being extradited to Indiana right now. I believe she was arrested in San Francisco, and they're hoping that when she's extradited to Indiana, where she is from and where the body was found, that she might be able to tell them where Dejan Anderson. And the paternal side of Cairo's family only found out this week about their loss. And quite a few of them have been interviewed. And John, you might have to take it for a little bit because I have to take care of somebody. So I'm going to put this on mute. And maybe there are a few, here we go. There are a few questions I would be curious to know. Here's what I want to say. She talked about him being a demon over and over and over again. And I want to read more of the probable cause, but I'm getting a blanket thrown at me. So if you can maybe start discussing that, and I'll read some more details in just a second.
Okay. Right. So the demon part definitely puts this more in line with Daybell, and I guess she didn't identify him as a zombie, but a demon is pretty much in the same family. So I think that makes this case super interesting in terms of the similarities to Daybell. And Lauren and I have talked about similarities to Matthew Coleman, who some of you we've talked about in the past. And we talked about on Patreon, we talked about a woman, Claudia Hernandez, who performed a horrific exorcism on her daughter, her 3-year-old daughter, who she eventually killed through the process of trying to exorcise a demon from her. So there definitely seems to be a pattern here of these demon-like or religious-based type murders, and clearly Daybell fits into that category as well. So
do you want me to read some of the things that, thank you everyone for understanding. We have the best community, by the way. I want to say that too. We try to do professional lives. We do our best. And I think it's so touching when people understand and make me feel good. Thank you. We are doing our best. We might need to start our lives earlier on Fridays or something so that we don't have teen babysitters canceling on us because they are starting to want to go out. So
we have a roster of 3 of them, by the way. So, but we can't seem to get one of them to commit.
Yes, and we do have John's parents too, but they're not in the best health, so they can't always commit either. It's dependent on how they're feeling. So, yes, thank you, Marie. I appreciate that. It's true. The pandemic has taught all of us to work from home with family and pets. Don't apologize. Yep, this is real life. You guys are seeing hidden true crime in all of its glory. So I'm going to bring up, and maybe John, you can. I'll show this. I do need to help him one last time. But I do want to show. I don't know if this is going to work. So let me see if I can zoom it in on here. So yeah, this is some of the stuff. I don't know if people can see this. Don Coleman was arrested. And then they were, so then now we discuss starting at number 24. Do you see number 24 there, John? Starting at about 24 is where we discuss all of our different social media posts. And one thing I want to say that really, really upsets me too, and maybe, I don't know, but I want to say, why wasn't anyone telling anyone about this? Why wasn't anyone sharing that she was sharing this stuff on social media? I'd like to think that if people saw this, that speak up. I think all of us that have been following Daybell, and I noticed that you mentioned Claudia. By the way, we do a whole podcast on Claudia Hernandez and what she did to her 3-year-old daughter on our Patreon account, as well as some things she said. When this happens again and again, if you see something, say something. But on or about December 5th, she sent the following message on her Facebook account to Theos and Michelle. And it says, my son's name is Cairo, I'm sure. And then she said, I offer a reversal spell, protection spell, activating your DNA, exorcism, hex curse. And then she stated on her Facebook account, I'm using my blood for this ritual. And then we'll go to the next page here. And that is the first page. Sorry. Here we go.
I want to thank Shelly, by the way, for her.
Oh, Shelly, thank you. I have not seen all of the comments because I'm over reading the probable cause.
And Debbie made one earlier. I want to thank her too.
John, thank you. Look at that, babe. You're like reading the comments too. You're really moving up in the world. Debbie, thank you. And to those that I missed, thank you so, so much. It means so much to us. Julie, thank you. Julie, by the way, I also want to thank Julie Holden tonight, our amazing mod. I let her know that I needed a little cheat sheet because she's so good at those. We shared one of her Zulema cheat sheet on Patreon, and she's had a very busy day today, to say the least, which she did not need to help us. Knowing that, I was like, hey, we're good. We're good. But she helped me get a lot of this information in order. So thank you so much, Julie. And so she is up to date with it too. So this one is upsetting. She says in a Facebook post, can everyone see that?
There you go. Yep, that's better.
Okay, thanks. I'm not seeing I'm not seeing it right now, the screen, so I can't totally see. But she writes, I cannot wait to tell my story. I had to raise my frequency. Pause, Lauren interjecting here. Frequency. The Daybell'S uses the word frequencies. And when I say the Daybell'S, I mean that group of friends, the Zulemas and the Loris and the Melanies and they talked about frequency. I had to raise my frequency, heal myself in past lives, heal my ancestors, heal crap in the universe, heal Gaia to exorcism, a very powerful demonic force from within my son, had people in enough alignment with their soul to assist me. Still, I chose my soul and I was able to completely heal myself and remove old paradigms from my mind. I know you can choose your soul with no questions asked. So it's almost like she's preaching to us now. And then she says, Dejan Anderson made the following post on her Facebook account. The same woman, and then she writes, stop getting caught up in the vessels of this realm. You guys get caught up with how old the body is. If they are adults and kids, etc., don't even know if it's a full-grown demon in the child's body telling you what to do because you didn't choose your soul. You better start using your third eye. To me, by the way, that really reminds me of Daybell, Lori, because she and Chad would think that there were these older souls that were being, put in these bodies, and including JJ and Tylee. It's heartbreaking. And then she states, you have to use your magic for everything. We have transitioned to living in the now. If you still have trauma that is unhealed, you are creating resistance for us that are healed. F with your frequency. Stop this low vibrational movement. You guys, go read Zulema's text. We have him on our Patreon account. She talks about vibrations all the time, and so does Lori Vallow. So this low vibrational movement. Oops. Sorry, everybody. Oops. Sorry if I'm making you car sick. On or about March 28th, she made the following post on her Facebook account. Can't wait to tell this story about that exorcism, a book about living with a demonic child, and a podcast. Okay, so this one I wanted to ask you, Dr. John. Now she's like saying, oh, I'm going to tell this story about this exorcism with my little boy, and it's going to be a book, and it's going to be a podcast. So now she's like thinking fame or something. It's crazy. And then it says, don't let the avatars fool you. There is a face under it you need to see. Some have souls, some don't. So in other words, her little boy, Cairo, is just an avatar. Evil and wicked is hiding in plain sight, must be kept rising, AKMG. And so now she is calling her little boy evil and wicked. Oh, sorry, car sickness again. Then Dawn Coleman, who is now behind bars, made the following post on her Facebook page. Just because the avatar is what we call a child does not mean that isn't actually a child. There are beings that are here that are not supposed to be here, that pick avatars to hide behind, to play roles, to steal energy. There's energy, stealing energy, and ruin lives. You better check to see if the child that you think are children actually have souls, or if they are not malevolent beings with a soul and in the child avatar. Magic is real. Magic is real. Curses are real. And there are some very powerful evil beings there that will curse your womb and then some. Nothing is what it seems. And we are catering to evil beings in children avatars that aren't even children. Y'all need to rise. Most of us won't. Most will be wiped out because of your demons in this paradigm has no room for that. I mean, let's just stop there. Is that enough for you to kind of gauge some of the social media posts? It's absolutely shocking. And then I want to point out this. I was watching, there's a 20-minute interview with Cairo's great grandmother, who only learned this week about his death. And the reporter asks her and reads to her some of this affidavit, this probable cause, and asks her, did she ever talk about demons? Did she ever do this? And the woman responds, I'm old. She kind of says, is this a thing? I don't know what people are into. Are people into demons? Are people talking about this? And the reporter said, I've never heard of anything like this. I'm kind of shocked. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, let's go over him. We've got Daybell. And when you and I started talking about Daybell 3 years ago, John, we were shocked. Almost 3 years ago. We were shocked. I was shocked. Maybe you were less shocked. I'll talk for myself. I was shocked, and you helped answer my questions. And we stated in our original podcast that we didn't want to see this happen to anyone else. And then we have Matthew Coleman. We discussed him on our YouTube channel here, and you discussed him even further on our Patreon account, who did the same to his children. He was a surf teacher in California and believed that they were demon DNA. That was his wording. And then we have Claudia Hernandez, who we discussed on our Patreon account, who thought her 3-year-old girl needed an exorcism, in which the girl was, I have someone present, Killed. We're now talking in code here because I have someone listening in. And then we have there are several others we're not even mentioning. There was a woman on Mother's Day who did this, I believe in California as well. And now we have Dejan Anderson, who did this to her little boy, a 5-year-old named Cairo. And she even had a friend, Dawn Coleman, behind bars, who's validating her, sort of like the Daybell case. That's reminiscent of that to me. What is going on? And that is why I'm so glad you're here tonight.
And you're just scratching the surface. There's plenty more cases that haven't received as much publicity. There was one last month where a father, killed his kids and his wife over some conspiracy stuff. Mm-hmm. There's so many of these cases that don't get publicized, believe it or not. They're extreme, but they don't get a huge amount of attention. And so I think when you look at the larger picture, you have to think that there's some cultural issues, right? I don't know how far I want to get into this, but
really quickly, Maurice stated, what about the father taking his kids to Mexico? That's Matthew Coleman, who we also covered when we discussed him, the surf teacher. Exactly. So men and women both.
I think to simplify matters, I think in an environment with a lot of fear and a lot of stress, extreme beliefs become more extreme. And I think the pandemic it created a lot of chaos and it created a lot of problems. And I think that many people were exposed. I've talked about the idea of terror management theory, which is that when we human beings are exposed to what's called mortality salience, or when our mortality becomes more I know I might have to edit myself a little. When our mortality becomes more prominent on a daily basis, which it was during the COVID pandemic, every day we would hear about statistics about how many people had passed away, right? And I think terror management theory says that when we receive this type of information, the way we cope with it is we become more invested in the culture that we're involved with. So if a part of our life and our community and culture is big into conspiracies or very religious or overly religious, then we're going to become more invested in that and things will become more extreme. So I think that's part of it. I think that a lot of people, maybe people that were struggling, people on the fringe with certain beliefs, those beliefs became more dangerous and more extreme during COVID. And I think this is what you see. I think this is a way to cope with a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of stress. And I think in this particular case, it would be my first initial mental health assessment would be, maybe there's probably some schizophrenia here. Maybe, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't doubt that there's some history of psychosis and probably schizophrenia. This sounds like someone who really struggles to stay attuned to reality to some degree. So I think if you have paranoid schizophrenia, let's say, and you couple that with a lot of stress and a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety, and you have a son who might be somewhat difficult, or you might find it difficult to manage a son if you have severe mental health problems. I think that one way of dealing with that is to abdicate any responsibility as a parent by blaming that child for your inability to parent, right? Like, under a lot of duress and stress, it's probably really difficult for someone like this to parent. And so rather than saying, I can't deal with my child, you say, my child's a demon. And then you take, if it becomes really extreme, you take steps like she did. I mean, that's obviously an outlier, but I think that's a beginning of an explanation. Did you hear that?
I heard it. I'm gonna walk someone out of the room. I thought it was very funny when you talked about having a son that might be difficult. I was like,
yeah.
So we can talk a little bit more freely too about some things. Okay.
What's the cliche that little pictures have big ears?
Yeah. Okay. Hold on, everybody. You can enjoy some of the comments. Yeah. And this is a great comment. Oops, sorry, not Julie's, but Shelley. Religion is often to blame, as are a host of reasons. Not sure what good blame does anyway. I agree, and we discussed that a lot. Like, what's the difference between religion and extreme beliefs? And I know that you say always that that's probably a full podcast season in its own. But
yeah, and I don't I don't think I'm blaming the religion. I think I'm blaming the way. I don't even know what her religious beliefs are.
Yeah, no, you're not blaming religion. She was agreeing with you. She was yeah, so many people.
Right, it's an easy out.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Artsy Cat. We love family night. It's the best. Thank you. If somebody has a great question, so what I'm looking for is a solid questions I can maybe leave Dr. John with, because I know I'm the one that kind of fills in the pauses for him, and then I can go continue family night outside of the door, and then we can really talk openly here. So I think also, with terror management theory, you discuss that a lot when it comes to Chad Daybell. With terror management theory, why are we, I know you kind of touched on it a little bit in your answer, but why are we seeing so much of it to an extreme? We are seeing more people, more paranoia right now, more fear. Why is that?
Because the environment is so uncertain, right? I think there's okay. So I'm trying to look at some of your questions here with Lauren stepping out. Lori's question about, okay, I'm sorry, the chat's going too quickly for me. Lauren usually manages it. Barbara Ann, we're all disgusted because we have kids. Go get a tablet and crayon for Banks. We need some of his fine art today because we are sad. That's true. He does do a lot of fine art, and it's a reminder of how wonderful kids are. And like many of you, I think it's really, really difficult, even though I've been in the forensic world for over 20 years, 25 years. When kids are harmed or killed, it's especially difficult, and it weighs heavily on me every time. And it's unfathomable to me that people would kill children. It's just incredible. It's unimaginable.
I want to thank everyone for their great comments, and thank you, Carol, for your support. I thought that, where did it go? I meant to post it.
Somebody asked a question about, is there more filicide than in the past?
And also filicide is a mother killing. See, now I feel free. I can talk. Filicide is a mother killing her children, but there's also, it's different. What's the name for when a father does it?
Filicide is killing children in general. It could be a father. It's not just a mother. So
I thought there was another name though for.
There's familicide. Familicide with males. Familicide is more common. That's when the offender or the perpetrator kills the entire family. I think that tends to be more of a male-oriented crime.
Okay.
But on this question, I don't, Shelley, I don't think the statistics are available. I think it'll be really interesting to see in a few years whether that's true. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an increase. I know that during COVID and in the last few years, there's been a much higher rate of suicide. So suicide's gone up. My guess is that fatalities of children have gone up significantly since the pandemic. I don't know. I think the statistics will be really interesting to see how this has affected all kinds of fatalities.
Colette Cox just had a great question, but before we answer it, I do want to bring up, someone said what we need is Banks's artwork. And I think that as odd as uncomfortable it was to talk about that in front of Banks, and we were using code words and I was having a hard time, and this is going to be something we're going to want to edit, I actually think it was a great example of how, just want to say, children are difficult. Children are hard. And that doesn't ever mean that they're demons. And I guess I just want to bring up that little thought I'm having, the irony that during that conversation, our 5-year-old boy, he's the exact same age as Cairo. So our 5-year-old boy would be the exact age. And so anyway, I just wanted to share because you guys mentioned his artwork. I don't know. It might be blurry. Oh yeah, it doesn't work. I have to take the blur off my camera for it to work. Huh? Nope, it is not going to work. I'll figure that out. But anyway, Colette Cox asks, do you think the internet and the ability to find others to confirm your beliefs is adding to the mental illness some have?
Yes, definitely. I think social media creates silos and people get stuck in those silos, and you just need social proof. You don't need evidence anymore. So if everyone in your silo or your group on social media believes the same things and they reinforce those beliefs, you don't need to back it up with evidence. So social proof, meaning the people you surround yourself with, is sufficient now to believe anything. And it's insane because it's just another step of moving away from a fact-based or an evidence-based world. It takes us further away from reality and more into kind of fantasy.
Yeah, and you can confirm your beliefs. It used to be that if you believed something that was kind of out there, reality would set you straight. People would say, that's not true, that's not true. But all you have to do is sit at home and not socialize with anyone, go online, go on a Facebook group that is titled Your Crazy Belief. Go in there, share your crazy beliefs and be validated rather than corrected. There's always going to be someone that believes something else crazy out there, and you can find each other and confirm one another's beliefs. And so rather than being corrected, you just seek validation. And you've talked a lot about that too. Confirmation bias. It's a lot easier to find these days. Okay, really quick. Here's the picture I was trying to show. I took the so
right.
And this is another one that I framed because I thought it was funny and it shows how difficult kids are. But he drew that in Sunday school. And it is if you think it's a blanket, think again, it's actually somebody farting. He drew that in Sunday school. I thought it was so cute. I framed it. It was not demonic, even despite it being in church. Okay. Sorry.
And thanks, Pamela. Pamela just contributed to our babysitter fund. So
thank you. Hopefully we'll be able to use it next time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, what's up with vibration BS is the rage on some wacky YouTube channels. Exactly, Diana. Like you can find yourself validated everywhere.
I think that, you know, one of the issues here, we haven't talked about this a lot, but there's so many issues about why extremism is on the rise and why people that were on the fringe before are now even more extreme. But I think one interesting thought I think to talk about would be there has been a little bit of a breakdown in religious authority. So if you think about like the Catholic Church, and this is one example, there are many, many examples of this, but the Catholic Church for the last 20 years has been dealing with the issue of pedophilia and sexual abuse in the church. And it's quite clear that they've covered up a big chunk of that or a large portion of that. And it's only been in the last 5 or 10 years that that's really become a reality and been shown to be accurate. And I think there's 3 billion Catholics in the world, right? So that really throws into question the authority of the Catholic Church. And this isn't just true of Catholicism. It's true of many, many other religions. There was a scandal in the Mormon Church about victims of sexual abuse not getting help. And I don't want to get into that, but my point is that I think there's been a bit of a breakdown and a lot of distrust around religious authority. And the Catholic Church would probably be the best example of that. And when you have that, when there's a massive distrust of religious institutions, I think people tend to find other ways to deal with that issue. So they invent their own religion, or they take some beliefs from Catholicism and they take some beliefs from New Age stuff and they combine it together and they come up with vibration, right? Like I think it's a coping mechanism that when these institutions start to fail to some degree, people find other ways of making up for it or of inventing their own realities. Yeah. So I think that's part of this.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, babe. Michelle, thank you. Michelle is always encouraging the thumbs up on our videos and giving us positive words. So thank you, Michelle. You got this.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that good example.
And
Um,
that, by the way, is just to start. I received a piece of mail today. This is not going to comment on this, but with the election coming up, I received a piece of mail today that said something like, do you really want to vote for this person because this person encourages transgender athletes to compete against your girls or whatever? And right. And I read that and I thought, that's another problem about in terms of what's going on now, is that traditional gender roles are kind of under siege to some degree, right? And so, in addition to issues around religious institutions, there's a lot of questions about gender and what gender role means in our society, and what do we do? Does someone who's trans share a bathroom with someone who's not? Right? There's all those questions, and I don't think there's easy solutions to those questions, but it certainly it certainly creates a lot more uncertainty around basic issues that we took for granted in the past.
things are more complicated, in other words.
It creates more stress. It creates more anxiety in our culture, creates more fear, right? All of this adds up. You have the pandemic, you have the breakdown of religious institutions, you have questions about science and evidence, and what do I feed my kids? If I give my kids food coloring, are they going to get cancer? Right? Like science is in question to some degree for many people. Gender roles are in question. All this stuff is now, that we used to take for granted, is now not taken for granted. And so I think that just creates an environment with a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety. And I think this is what you get. You get people that are becoming a little more extreme, or maybe a lot more extreme. They're developing more fringe beliefs. They're believing in fantasies that probably wouldn't have been accepted as real in the past. And, we're seeing potentially, I don't know the statistics yet, but I think we're definitely seeing, as Shelley said, probably more filicides than we have in the past.
Yeah. And because I know YouTube and I know how things are taken out of context, I want to be very clear that John is an LGBTQ ally. What he is saying is that there are billions. Are there billions or trillions of people in this world? There are so many people in this world that with things changing, they are afraid and they are trying to hold on to things. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is about change, and this is about individual rights, and that people struggle with major societal changes, of course. And the typical response to change is to try to revert back to something in the past, or to try to create this fiction that the grass was greener on the other side, 50 years ago.
Right. Change is hard for people. That's what you say. Change is hard for people, and a lot is changing, and a lot is changing quickly.
And the main point is that I'm just pointing to these cultural changes to point out that it creates a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. And human beings in general don't do well with uncertainty and stress. And so the tendency is to latch onto something that provides some sense of security and some sense of certainty, even if it's completely unhinged, and then to live your life in that fantasy world as if it's true, as if it's certain. I mean, Daybell did that.
I think this is a great comment we need to talk about. The Taliban operates on fear of change. I think a lot of terrorists operate on fear of change. Chad Daybell operated on fear of change. If you listen to our podcast, I had to post what Justine said because there is something to that. The fear of change in human beings and the extreme fear of change is what makes, is what can create crime. I'm learning, what creates criminals and crime and cults and Lori Daybell.
Right.
Am I off on that?
The Taliban would be a great example of a group of people with power who have very, very rigid beliefs about many things and are simply not open to change, not open to other ideas, not open. Right. They're an example of a group that no matter what evidence you present them or what you say, that if you try to argue that women should be equal to men, they're not going to accept it. So hence the violence, hence the terror.
Hence, get me in the kitchen and barefoot and pregnant and making you more meals. Yeah. I love that. It's like trying to tell someone why coffee is superior to a protein shake, or, you just, it's trying to explain to someone what they've done every moment of their life, they shouldn't do, to try to change it's trying to tell you, that you've done something a certain way every year of your life. And now it has to change. It's different. It's hard for people.
And let me comment on this comment here about her child, and the fear. And I agree. That's exactly what it is. It's the fear of acknowledging difference and diversity, and someone who might challenge your traditional notions of gender, rigid notions of gender.
She continues, that trans person is going through a lot more than the cognitive dissonance you may feel. And it takes enormous courage to be out and trans.
I agree.
Yeah. And so someone up here, and I'm trying to find it, said, here we go, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. Embrace change. Change can be a really good thing. I think, or not even change, or just acknowledging, sometimes, again, the older we get, the harder it might be to change. And you can feel good about your ways, but to understand that others are different, and that's okay. That people believe differently,
There's a personality variable. There's a model of personality called the 5-factor model. I've talked about that a little bit in our podcast, but one of the 5 variables in that model is called openness to experience. And so there's a genetic component to that. I think some people tend to be a little more open to change than other people, and some of it is temperamental. Some of it is something we can't really change that much, at least for some people. I think we can if we work on it, but openness to experience is a personality variable, and it's hey bud, you gonna say hi? Can you talk in? Oh, mom turned the mic off. I think I think yes, Lisa, I agree. I think Banks is out of the room now, so maybe I can address this, but absolutely, it should be a common ground that killing children is not acceptable. So I don't think there's any context in which killing children would make any sense or has any justification whatsoever.
I missed that whole thing, but yeah, what you said.
Right. I was seeing if Banks could say a few things, but you muted your mic, so I guess we're not going to hear from Banks tonight.
Yeah, well, I like was really freaking out when I said, "Okay, let's go." He wanted a Mickey Mouse drink, and then I was out there getting a Mickey Mouse drink, and he wasn't anywhere. So I was like, "Banks, where are you? Banks, get over here!" So I'm glad that he didn't learn where the mute button was. Actually,
Yeah, it's a little tricky. He's figured out a lot for his age, but that one he hasn't cracked yet.
Yeah, thank heavens, or how to get his own Mickey Mouse drink. So we're gonna have to work on that. Anyway, thank you. John, thank you for what you've shared. And
could you post a comment by Nicole? Please?
Yeah. I love that you see the comments. Did I miss it though? Nicole, I'm looking for Nicole. Is it?
It's at the top now, kind of, that we are all humans.
Nicole, if you know what he's talking about and you want to copy and paste it and post it again. Oh, and I want to share that too, though. She's saying these are my first ever comments after following since the beginning, and I appreciate any support. So
thank you. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for trusting our community with something very vulnerable about your family. Thank you. Julie Holden says, I also love that John is reading comments now. I agree. So I'm going
to... Michelle just reposted it, I think.
Oh, Michelle did?
Can you see it?
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for doing that. That means a lot. This is what Nicole said. We are all humans and are more alike than we are different. That's how I treat everyone until I'm shown something different. But I still think 99.9% of people are good and a few evil.
And in my work, I worked with some of the worst human beings. And my job is still to be objective and compassionate and to make the best assessments I can, in spite of the fact that people have done some horrendous things and they've hurt people and they've created a lot of pain. But still, I see my job as being non-judgmental and to see people as human beings and to be compassionate. And I think not to be afraid of the people I'm in front of. So I agree with that comment. I feel very much like that.
Thank you. Angela says, people need to reach out socially in real life, not just take the internet's word on others. I agree. And with that being said, someone just joined us, Susanna, and she wanted to reiterate that it hasn't been confirmed that picture of, was it Richard Allen was taken at his house with his wife. That we don't know yet. And that's true. We're waiting for that press conference that was found by web sleuths. That was about the Delphi murders and the arrest that was made. And you're right. It's a very creepy picture. We'll see. And not take the internet's word for it. And then I think Shelley said, I think evil, Shelley writes, encompasses what we don't yet understand.
Yes. In a professional context, I would never use the word evil. It's something I've never used in a report. It's something I think it's important to think about philosophically, but professionally, I would never use that term. So I agree. Also, the term monster, right? The Netflix just put out the new Jeffrey Dahmer series, and the title is Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. And I don't know, Dahmer is certainly one of the worst of the worst in terms of serial killing. But to start to name a series with Monster, I mean, you're already dehumanizing him, and maybe he should be dehumanized. But on the other hand, I don't know. You and I are going to be talking about Dahmer in the future, so
we are.
It's something on our mind. But
John has received many, many books recently, and he has been studying Dahmer for years. Actually, that's something that people don't know necessarily about John, but he's had an interest in Dahmer for years. And so with some things coming out. He's refreshing and ordering some even new books. And
I
he
had a
apologized. He
mentor.
apologized to the postwoman this week for all of his book packages coming. He has yet to apologize to me about not purchasing himself some sturdy bookshelves yet, and continuing to put the books all over all of our furniture throughout the entire house. But I'll wait for that apology later. Just kidding.
To follow up on my point, that when people use the term evil and monster, I think you're already starting to categorize people. You're already trying to dehumanize in a way and to make yourself feel better. And so I'm really reluctant to. It always makes me a little nervous when people jump to evil or monster or think labels like that in terms of classifying people, because I don't know if that's necessarily true. There's reasons Dahmer did what he did. He's, whether we like it or not, he's a human being, and certainly I don't agree with what he did, or I don't condone what he did, and he's an outlier even in terms of serial killers, but he is human. And my job is to try to understand how and why he did that so that we can learn from it.
Thank you. I've been seeing quite a few comments from an Anna, by the way. Anna, send me an email at hiddentruecrime@gmail.com. I'd love to talk further with you. And yeah, with that being said, thank you, everyone. Was there a brain scan done on Dahmer? I'm not sure. And Julie Holden writes, what I actually believe. No such thing as too many books. So as I make fun of my husband and his many books, I actually believe what Julie Holden believes there. And it makes me more in love with you every day that you order so many books, and that the one thing you have laying around our house are books. So
thanks for the support, Julie. I'm glad you're a simpatico colleague.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Barbara says, John, we want the real truth on Dahmer, as you can best explain to us, because we want to know why he did it. And that is, yes.
Yeah, we're gonna be digging into Dahmer, I think, in a way that nobody has. And I'm gonna cite some literature and philosophy, and we're gonna talk about I think it's gonna be unique. I think our goal is to put out some podcast episodes that can serve as maybe a companion guide to the Netflix series, maybe a rebuttal to some of it as well. So there's so much on Dahmer now. I mean, it's it's an absolutely amazing case. It's fascinating, and we're looking forward to getting into it.
Yes, we are. With that being said, Dr. Matthias, are you going to say something about your mentor? And then,
just that he was a consultant to the Dahmer case. Most of the Dahmer stuff was going on before I started grad school, but he was a consultant on the Dahmer case. And when I was showing some interest in forensic psychology, he had access to Dahmer's case file. So he would share Dahmer's case file with me as one of his supervisees. And I remember the testing that was done on Dahmer back in the 90s when he was going through his trial, and he shared many of the experts and their opinions. And I always feel like sometimes I'll say, oh yeah, I was involved in the Dahmer case. I wasn't directly involved in the Dahmer case, but I feel like I was indirectly involved because I was being supervised by someone who was an amazing forensic psychologist, and he's now deceased, but he was a consultant on the case.
Thank you. When I was dating John, I heard about this too. We talked Dahmer. The conversations, the true crime conversations, we didn't record. There were so many good ones. Scott, thank you. Genuinely.
Yeah, thank you,
I always am happy to see you, Scott, in our chat. And we love, especially John, to have more male voices join us, because we want this to be a conversation for everyone. And so thank you for being here and for always participating with your great comments. Polly Gregory, we also appreciate you so much, and absolutely would consider doing a segment on the Susan Powell case. That is a case. So John followed Dahmer. I followed Susan Powell. I was a reporter at the time. I reported both in Utah and Idaho, and she was a woman that was my age who went missing. She was a mother, and I followed that in detail from the very beginning. Everything that happened before the Cold podcast that was so well done came down. And I have interviewed her best friend, Kirsty. That's on our YouTube channel. I'm not sure if you saw that, Polly, but I did interview Kirsty Hallowell about recently about Susan. And when the case first hit, I also interviewed Kirsty, which is why we have remained friends through the years, and is why I recently interviewed her. So you can find that on our YouTube channel too. If any of the mods have that link, I'll share that. But that is a heartbreaking story, and I hope that her parents will one day find closure by finding their daughter's body and being able to lay her to rest next to her two sons. So,
and that by the way is the case of familicide, where Josh Powell basically killed the entire family, right? So there's a difference between filicide, which is killing children, and familicide, which is killing the entire family.
Yes. We can only extend empathy as far as our own hearts and minds and spirits allow. It's not a demand of being human. It's an opportunity. I love that. An opportunity. Yes. I'd be happy to interview Rebecca Morris, Debbie Day. With that being said, we just keep getting more comments and more questions. Anybody else have anything? Is anything else you want to say, babe? Are we ready to call it a night and go embrace our little troublemaker?
Right. I think we're just scratching the surface of some of this. There's so many variables that go into a situation like this, where a child is murdered and the mother has these extreme beliefs. There's cultural considerations, there's sociological considerations, there's psychological, right? There's so much stuff, and I feel like we've kind of just scratched the surface. But I think as we learn more, when they find her and arrest her, and she does a police interview, and they do I'm sure they'll do some competency evaluations, and maybe consider her for insanity. It'll become, more detailed, and we'll have more information, and we'll hope to make more sense of it the more we learn.
Yes. Sundancer, send us an email. Stephanie, thank you for being a mod. She says, to suggest a case for Lauren and Dr. John to cover, send an email to hiddentruecrimeinfo@gmail.com. And that is true. We have two email addresses to suggest cases. Hidden True Crime Info is being used a little bit more. There's also Hidden True Crime, but Hidden True Crime Info is a great one. Sundancer, you have me curious. I would love to know more. So please email us. Thank you, Kitty. People were suggesting some of Bank's drawings for a new mug. They didn't know that he designed merchandise, mug merchandise. And I'm wondering which one. Do you mean the family, or do we mean the one he rebelliously and now people know what it is. We can look at more time. He rebelliously drew in Sunday school.
Yeah, I don't think we should put that one on a mug. It probably
well, Colette was saying she wanted it. Yeah, let us see, Artsy Cat's like, yep, and Artsy Cat should have one of our mugs. So.
We're open to a lot of ideas, but I can honestly say that merchandise is not something we focus too much on. So we just got some statistics on our merchandise today. I think we sold we sold like one item in the last 3 or 4 months. So we're not
Well,
exactly.
that's because we haven't been sharing it all the time. But looking at comments, I have a feeling that the fart mug would sell out. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if that's something I'd want to drink from, but I mean, our viewers seem to be taking to it.
I think everybody. Oh, yeah. Someone says it'll make you smile if you look at it. So I'll tell you guys the real truth then. Uh, who is the biggest figure in Banks's family? I think that's a good question because he wrote dad, mom, but I do think he was the little guy. He was the little one. So I don't know. But I will say, I will tell you the truth. I was being a little sheepish when I shared this picture with you. Sean's laughing. He was very specific. He drew four drawings in Sunday school, and the first was a rainbow, and the second one was hearts, and the third one was mom, and it was more hearts, and then the fourth one was mommy farting. So he did specify who that person was. So not that I do that ever. I think he mixed me up with his father, or was thinking about.
No, I think he was pretty clear about who it was.
Okay. Anyway, so with that being said, we'll work on some merchandise. We also have some great hidden mugs and Venus flytrap mugs and t-shirts, and we'll share those. Okay, so coming up, 2 other cases. So let's just give the update on some other cases we're working on. Timothy Haslett Jr., that is the man that's been arrested near Kansas City and Excelsior Springs that we've been covering in detail. I am in touch with the editors of the Kansas City Defender, a newspaper that has been following the case closely, and actually were the ones that did share Bishop Tony Caldwell's warnings with the public, and then they got shamed by the Kansas City Star and Kansas City Police that said that's not true. They're not there's no one targeting Black women on Prospect Avenue. And then this woman, who was a Black woman, escaped from Timothy Haslett Jr.'s home in Excelsior Springs. And she said her other friends didn't make it. I know that the police are investigating in detail. No other victims have been mentioned, but I think it's important to say that they have not said there aren't any other victims. And there's been some confusion about that. There's been some press releases with some very vague wording that have come out. And I'm trying to tell the story, and I look over and I see someone saying, well, what should the farting mug say? So sorry, I'm having a hard time focusing. But this case is really intense. So back to this. I won't look at the comments. The vague wording in the press releases is important because if there were no other victims, police would simply say there are no other victims. And let me tell you the few things that I've noted in the press release. That is that they say there were no other victims found on his property. That does not say no other victims. No other victims found on his property. And then they have requested people to reach out to help them with evidence. They don't share what that evidence is, evidence collected. I can also tell you that in speaking to police and discussing it with someone, when they call police, they kind of say, well, we're not saying, to go and press them. Are you saying that there are no other victims at all? And then they say, we are saying that there are no victims found on his property. Like, they repeat that very specifically. They don't say that's not what we're saying. And then another thing they state is, that the investigation is still ongoing. And so my point is, I don't think this case is over. I don't think she was the only victim. And I think we're going to find out a lot more. So be careful. Note the vague, note the wording, the very specific wording that they use. So to be determined. And I know that John and I talk about that case a lot, and it is a very intense case. And I'd recommend anyone going to our Excelsior Springs playlist to get caught up. The other one that we're covering, the Rebecca Barsotti case, we did a podcast on that, or I did. John did too, because you were with the child for days, for hours and hours. I put that together. And that case is getting attention. And all I can say is what I kind of said on the podcast, that I have a feeling many more will soon know Rebecca Barsotti's name. And there are many people behind the scenes, media, looking at her case. And if you are interested in that case, the video podcast that I did, it's about an hour long, is what you need to know to be understand Rebecca's case. And I would really recommend that. And you can see everything on the Rebecca Barsotti playlist, but the one video I'm discussing is called The Mysterious Disappearance of Rebecca Barsotti. So with that, that's it. No, and they have not mentioned what is in the barrels yet through the Timothy Haslett case. And I got to share this, John.
Yeah, if we could somehow transform it into an ink blot, I think that would be great. I also think that too, right? No words needed.
No
Speaks
words
for
needed.
itself.
Yes. So that's our latest. And then we are, for those that aren't on Patreon, we do podcast episodes there. Our most recent was Julie Rowe. For those that are familiar with the Daybell case, you should know who Julie Rowe is. She was also featured on Netflix along with John. Aren't you proud? You've been featured with Julie Rowe a couple times now. You have arrived, babe. You're also was also on
right. Well, I haven't declared myself to be a prophet yet, so maybe that's coming soon. Maybe that's to be announced.
To be announced, yeah.
I want to mention we're going to be talking about on our Patreon. We're going to be talking about a show I watched on Netflix. I knew the case a little bit, but Netflix did an interpretation of it. It's called The Good Nurse. It's about a male nurse. His name is Charlie Cullen, and it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. They believe that he has over 400 victims. They can't prove all that, but it's something we're going to talk about. I haven't really been involved in a lot of medical type murder cases, but I started thinking about those types of cases, and I think it really is fascinating to think that how in the medical profession it would be relatively, I don't want to say simple, but it would be relatively easy to kill people undetected to some degree. So it's a really interesting movie for those of you who have Netflix and haven't seen it. It's called The Good Nurse. It's about a serial killer who works in a hospital, or actually a series of hospitals, and he's really never caught for many, many years. It's just a fluke that they catch him. So fascinating show.
Yes. And Colette is asking about something else we really want to talk about. Did you talk about I Just Killed My Dad already? Skye Borgman's other film.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that as well. I was waiting for Lauren to catch up and watch it, and she has. So we're gonna talk about that too. I actually had a case that was very similar to that, but Anthony was a juvenile, and the case I had was an adult, but a lot of similarities.
Crystal Dawn, you are such a loyal hidden gem. We love you. She's so sweet. Do you have a PO box we could send Bank some cards and pictures and activities and do on Friday night? Thank you. So it's something to look forward to. What a sweet thought. And I will say this, although it's been a little bit more difficult and chaotic today, and John and I have been a little bit more chatty and less organized, it is kind of nice to know he's right here, because I don't feel like we have to rush off and and get to the babysitter. We are kind of hanging out with our friends tonight. So thank you all for letting us do that. And oh, Crystal, thank you. We are working on a PO box. It's something else that we need to get done along with our new merchandise. So I'll put that on the to-do list, the new merchandise, as well as a PO box. Thank you, Crystal, so much. So, and yeah, Michelle, if you and Artsy Cat and Julie want to put that together, I will yeah, and I agree. Banks has been very good tonight. So he has. He has. All right. Yes, we have a lot of things to talk about. And again, I want to reiterate, if you guys have ideas for Hidden Hour, by the way, this is TGIF, but we're going to call this the Hidden Hour now because we think that's more appropriate since we're covering some tragic crimes and it's not always happy. But so we will be doing the Hidden Hour every night, every Friday night, not every night. Don't worry, babe. Don't worry. That was a slip. We'll be doing it every Friday night. We usually do them at 7. There might be some change with babysitters or other situations that come along. So if you have also topic ideas for Hidden Hour for us that you would love John's advice. Thank you, Paula. Yes. In cases for Patreon. And again, we will be doing another season of Hidden True Crime on a podcast too. Let us know. Let us know. This is a community. And John and I have been talking about how the journey to get to where we've been. And it really has it's been our hidden gems, us and our community. And we're so grateful for all of you that have supported us along the way, because that's really what this is. So thank you. Thank you, T Diva. All right. Anything else, babe?
I think we've covered just about everything.
I know, we really have. We really have. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us on a more casual night and covering these really important cases. And we will definitely be following them along. So thank you. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night. Thanks.
Have a safe Halloween.
Yeah, right. For sure.
Check your candy. Okay. Good night.